Mission Manager, North India IBO, as the panel moderator, and Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni, Director, Mayo College, Ajmer, Shashi Banerjee, Principal Shiv Nadar School, Noida, Marian Hofgartner, founder of the TLI Pedagogics and Lelek Academy, Austria, Mr. Amlan Saha, Principal the Sagar School. A huge round of applause for the panel on why kids need to unleash the rascal within.
Good morning. Let's give it up for Dr. Swati. I think she did a great job to set the tone for today. I'm very happy to have a very distinguished panel here. How many of you have seen the movie Three Idiots? Right? Almost all of us. But how many of you want that child to be in your classroom? Okay, not as many hands, but good to see quite a few hands going. So I will set the tone with a very beautiful quote from Albert Einstein, who said, "I don't have any special talents, but I have a passion for curiosity." Okay, so unleashing the rascal within. I'm Mahesh Balakrishnan, Development and Recognition Manager for International Baccalaureate in India. IB program by itself is inquiry-led learning, and we have approaches to learning and teaching. Okay. So I will start by allowing the panelists to introduce themselves and also set the tone on, does our current system allow for questioning? I start with Jindal Sahab here, and one of the things which I want him to answer specifically is conformance really bad?
That's a good start. The mic is telling me I should keep shut. So I think for those of you yesterday you saw me on stage, I'm Surendra Kulkarni, and I have the privilege of heading Mayo College, where I was a student many years ago. So that's my main qualification for being there. And there was this talk about conformity and creativity. And I'm often asked that after having spent 40 years in the army, is my main contribution to my school discipline. It's not the main contribution, but discipline is a huge contribution I make to the school. But not military discipline. Because military discipline requires a large number of people to do the same thing at the same time in the same way. So that is conformity. It's needed in the military. It's definitely not needed in my school, where each and every child is a unique entity, and each and every child must be allowed to grow and flourish with their own genius. So therefore, conformity is a no-no in my school. Except, of course, as Swati said, in terms of dress and other things, so that they don't differentiate themselves in terms of where they come from, what they have back home and all that. But this notion that we should have standardization is the biggest mistake we try and do. And when you combine standardization with scaling, which is what the education sector loves to do, it's a complete national disaster. So what we need to look for are standards, not standardization. And each school can define and set its own standards, and we like to believe we are doing the same. Thank you.
Do you think our system allows for questioning?
Of course, the system allows for questioning. I have this favorite picture which I show to my teachers often, which is a quote from the Nobel laureate Richard Feynman, which says that I'd rather have questions that cannot be answered rather than answers that can never be questioned, which is the story of education when I was a student.
Good morning, my name is Marian Hopfgartner. I'm the founder of TLI Pedagogics and the Lelek Academy, which is located in Vienna. We have a pre-primary teachers training of 700 hours, which is certified by the Austrian government, including everything that Dr. Svati Bobatz was just showing you, so I can sign it. And there's nothing else to say. But over the many years of working with children, I was a principal of myself starting 1997. I discovered that with moving into this 21st century, and I heard Dr. Swati speaking many times already, and also I follow her a little bit on Facebook, so I think she agrees with that also, hopefully. We have to take it a step further by putting the position of the teacher in a kind of a different perspective. So the teacher's role changes a lot in the 21st century. And that is what is challenging, not just to India, but to all of the countries all over the world. Austria is undergoing a huge fight with me, for example, because they are actually trying to focus more on academics because of the bad PISA studies in pre-primary and in primary school. The results, if you look at them, we are not really on the top. But the same that I can see happening here in the schools already, included IB, for example, is that mainly it's the teachers not being used to handling children or to working with children in a very different way. And the why, how, and all of this questioning turns out to be also to a certain degree disturbing to the teacher, because it's difficult to lead a classroom setup where everyone has their own opinion, isn't it? But still we have to bring this democratic viewpoint in the class set that we can go in one direction and move on and come to a result. And so this is when I started to develop TLI Pedagogics in 1998 till 2013. With a lot of empiric research and working and neuroscientific addings, thankfully, from starting 2000, because then we had some results. And the questioning part of students is the basis for TLI Pedagogics. It's not the teacher who leads the classroom, it's the students. Always according to what age group and development we are really facing. It's something different if I work with children at the age of 2 or 3, or with children at the age of 8 or 9. So that is something that is a challenge for teachers, and still we all asking the question, how can we adjust to this kind of working with children? Yeah, to really being with them and guiding them through a process. So it's the questioning part that makes them from a dependent being to an independent being, which we actually all want, but the question how to get them there, that's the big question we all ask.
Good morning, I'm Amlan Shah, heading the Sagar School, Alwar. Probably sitting as the best example of non-restricted move, thanks to Ravi, shifting me from this panel to that panel, and today bringing back this morning when we received the message through the new schedule. In my opinion, if God has given us one brain to utilize to each human being, and probably we are not doing it in the right way, We have grown up in the instructional age. No offense to anyone. The mother-in-law gives the instruction to the daughter-in-law when she grows up, and she will give the instruction in the same way to the new daughter-in-law. And it's going on, happening in the classrooms from the teacher to the student. Had it been the case, probably God would have given only one brain to the whole human community and to process the instruction, not to follow or not to create or invent our own logic. Now, if we have got this part, the way that Swati ma'am was talking about the thinking brain, I think we have to move away from that instructional age and give that particular space to the child that, okay, this is the way you can think, you have got your own space, leave the blank page. Don't restrict within a circle or box or any particular drawing. Thank you.
Okay, Shashi.
Thank you so much for that. And it is absolute energy that you've charged us all with, Dr. Vyas, because what we're talking about is what you need to experience firsthand, all the time, every day. And somebody who built a great institution said, if you can enable somehow the experience of gestation and giving birth, the joy, the labor, the pain, every now and then, and I think it's a very tedious job, but that's when you can really keep a learner's sense of being and value alive in any institution, which is a formal institution. So I'm Shashi Banerjee, who's had the privilege and this great opportunity to be learning through building an institution which is now 8 years old, called the Shiv Nada School, and for all the years, that maybe 35 odd years, where as a young bride, when you step into the army, that's a great institution, and then you start teaching. So I think first-hand learning has enabled us all, and I think every one of the great practitioners sitting here would agree that it is easy to say that in your mission statement or your vision, we are a school which believes in experiential learning and discovery-led learning. But I think the whole thing starts when you have that real rascal that we are talking about, posing questions and defying notions that you held on to. So creativity actually, I feel, is something that comes out of compassion, and I think nothing is more proactive than compassion, but often is labeled as creativity comes from defiance. So I think as a society, as a community, often educators have to see what we really, the glossary of terms of discipline, defiance. Yesterday, Ms. Bindra was talking about cognitive dissonance. So what does this all actually imply in the education world? And if we are to break the script, to break the mold, what does this breaking of the script require? Is it just change, or is it the management of change that we are sometimes fumbling with? So the child from a Krishnamurti Foundation school who never has to ask permission to get out to drink water because that's a need, biological need, to where it is considered sacrilege because you've kind of broken the rules of the game when you're doing something like that on your own. So I would like to learn from the panelists and from the interaction as to how do you feel, do you let this energy unleash in an environment where you have to have the learning outcomes get taken care of, and you have to see that there is an individual definition to success for everyone. And I think once again, bringing back yesterday's conversation, it is the teacher, it is the caregiver, it is the carer, the parent, everyone who has to understand a little bit of this notion. So over to this discussion and over to Swati about unleashing that rascal within all of us.
Hi, I'm Swati from Cialfo. I'm the head of operations in India. I think education system has changed and there is an open house for questions. But that's what I feel, because I visit a lot of schools in India and across the globe, and what I feel is the schools have opened the question house for subjects like English, mathematics, all subjects. But where can the students go if they have questions related to life? Which are the most important? I think they are more important than learning English, because all these things remain static, but what's changing is life.
Could you please
So-
rise for His Excellency? We welcome His Excellency Shri VP Singh Badnor. Sorry for the interruption, panelists. Just a few minutes.
Yeah. So my question to the educators is that the things that remain static, algebra would not change. It would be the same. English, literature, language, everything remains the same. But what's changing is life. What's changing is connection of that learning to life, which is nowhere. I don't know. I have seen like only 20% of the schools doing it and missing in 80% of the schools. So my question to everyone here is, how can we bridge that gap? Can we keep some extra periods for the students where they can just go and ask questions related to life, or which are not related to any subject? They can be foolish questions. So my question is to all the panelists, because we have from the schools, people from the schools, Shiv Nadar, Leo Boys, and also the other educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Swati. So, drawing from where she left off, is where is the stumbling block? Is it schools themselves? Is it the system? Are we under pressure to complete the syllabus? So, and where do we draw a line between questioning and nuisance?
The core theme for this morning is how to unleash the beast within the child. The beast is already there in the child, it's already unleashed. It's after they come to school that there's a very systematic method of controlling this beast. So I recommend all of you listen to Pink Floyd music and remember the song, Another Brick in the Wall, and there's a nice phrase that says, "Teacher, leave the kids alone." For God's sake, the system that we all grew up in was designed and suitable to the industrial age where mass production was needed. Today, when it's the digital, disruptive startup world, then each child, as I said, is a unique entity. Please allow them to flourish on their own. You can't wait for the boards to change their assessment systems. You can't wait for the curricula to catch up. So up till the time, up to class 8, when you're not obliged to follow any board, please design your own curricula and run it the way you like. Get the parents off your back. Educate them first before you educate the students. That look, please leave the kid alone till class 8. Don't talk about the grades and other things. We'll discuss everything else. Class 9 onwards, catch up with whichever board you want. So please, don't look around and blame the government, don't blame policies, blame ourselves. We are the only hindrance to what's happening in the school.
Thank you. And I think you hit the nail on the head.
So, it's like the chrysalis. And what we often do when you said, leave the child alone, is like just when the pupa is ready to be the butterfly, and that's where the teacher needs to completely, whoever, society needs to safeguard and let the butterfly be. So there are two analogies that come to my mind. One is letting the butterfly be who the butterfly needs to be is the complete engagement in curriculum that we often fumble with, coming to what you say. And then you cripple that learner for life. And when you actually have the butterfly in your hand, and that's a very, very commonly known question, is the butterfly dead or alive? And what you said, it is in our hands. We can decide whether we let it fly or we let it perish forever. So thank you for bringing that in. And I thought irrespective of any curriculum. We had a lot of discussion yesterday on curriculum and also grades and marks. So good marks or success is a byproduct of any good education. And curriculum is not something that we need of a certain kind. It is how you engage and who are we. And I think a lot of conversation yesterday on vulnerability and how vulnerable are each one of us here and ready to be vulnerable. And only then with the child, it's a power game. Are you ready to hand over that power for the child to learn and create the world? And I think we solve all the problems, and that's a problem.
Yeah, so my answer still remains, I mean, it's the same. That, I think the education system, we can't blame that because, there is fixed curriculum, you have to finish certain topics and, and I think the school heads have to set and give guidelines to the teachers that this needs to be done, completed by this semester. So, I don't know how the teachers get that opportunity to spend that time with the students to do that. I mean, take their questions, because every student will have a lot of questions, not just one question in, just 30 minutes class. How do you expect the students to ask questions and those questions to be answered by the teachers? So my question is that, because we still have to follow that board, and where you have to complete that topic, like in a month, of course, you would be checking that is this completed or not, and to complete that target, the teacher cannot answer each and every question. So how do you handle that? I mean, if you can help me answer that.
So I see more questions, and I think questioning is what she's doing, and that's what we want to encourage. And I leave it to Marian and Amlan to answer. And also, how can we use learning spaces instead of classrooms? How can we tie in innovation as an outcome of questioning?
Okay, so there are so many questions now. How do I go for them? I think one point I would like to address this one is not so difficult as we think it is. We have a huge movement in Europe which really goes against this curriculum, and those people are moving more in the direction to say it's not the exam that's important, it's the end result. So they leave out the exams and they have only one exam at the end of the year where they see if children really reach their marks, or some of them even have only exams at the end of completion of primary school and then end of completion of secondary school. And this is done together with the government. The government is not very happy about that, but they allow it because at the end they reach the result. So actually each and every student is able to go by themselves in their speed, but at the end still there has to be a result. So that is kind of a compromising how maybe that could be done. Yeah, you can think about it if you want to look into that in India. You need to see if it can be applied. The important question for me is, in the previous one asked, why? What questions shall we have children ask, and where is a border to it? Yeah, so what is the ratio that is able to be unleashed, and where do we have to also secure to a certain degree society, our social awareness and all of that? So for example, coming to the question, try a house. Yeah? What would be the most important question to ask? It would be why. Why should I draw a house? What is the use of drawing a house? Does it really make sense? Because this is what creates discernment. And in everything that we want children to do, there has to be also an understanding included. And bringing children to asking questions means that we help them to really use the brain, to use discernment in a world where we get lots of information. Some of the information is right, some of the information might mislead us in a wrong direction. So how do we help children to actually really live in this kind of world without making them asking the questions and stopping us asking the questions? So that's the challenge we have to face. The next point is that, of course, in the growing up process, we can see in the children certain kind of behaviors. which are maybe not benefiting the social community, but which we want to build in India or in any other country. So like, is it okay for a child to just drop their waste and have someone else pick it up? Or is it a teacher's responsibility to say something? Yes, of course it is. So it's not just about having them do what it is, it's about leading them and helping them in a very different way of saying, okay, you know, we decided on living like this in that country, I'll give you this information, how would you like to contribute to live like this? Yeah, so each country has the specifications. So what we have a lot in TLI pedagogics is called the philosopher approach. So we have a lot of philosophic discussions with the students about how and what and why. Why should we actually clean up India? Yeah? Why should we actually think about maybe taking on a project, a charity project, as a school who can afford it? All of that, including participation of the students in each and everything. Students are not stupid. Yeah? So as soon as the cognitive ability is there to ask questions like why, what, and how, according to the age, we can include them in decision making. So why do we make the rules of the classroom? Why? Why don't we include the children? Why don't we have children participation and ask them? We are living in democratic countries, so let them be a part, have elections, all kind of things. That's a natural process of helping them to grow up. This is what we would like to really inspire all teachers all over the world to think about and integrate it according to what is possible in your area.
Thank you. How can you use innovation and what are you telling that new learning space? Probably I'm going to pick up an example from the contemporary era. How many of you may not like it, may not agree. How many of you have heard this type of dialogues from your students? Abhe Chintu, mujhe piche se attack kar raha hai, support de mujhe. While they are playing something. Have you heard this thing? Dialogues? While they are playing PUBG. I am not in favor of addiction for any reason, but think about the 21st century skills you are talking about. You are talking about collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork, communication, internationalism. While they are playing PUBG, they are utilizing all those things in one way or another. Is it not innovation in their way? This is probably the reason they like to play. We tell them, stop it, don't play it, don't go for addiction, but think critically that while they are going through this type of games, which is not happening probably in your classroom, they are actually acquiring the skills which we want them to acquire for living in the next century, in that sense. So that could be the area of innovation. He's showing the placard, so better let it go back to the moderator.
2 points, one is one.
I just wanted to cite an example of my son recently. He studies at Genesis Global School, and I really like the way the concepts are being taught. So, for example, it was transport week going on for 2 weeks, and then they literally called a pilot who did a session, and the students asked him questions like, okay, how do you fly, what's a cockpit? So they were allowed to ask any questions. So right from that age, if you allow the students to, meet such people, understand their journey, so I think the students will start thinking in the right direction. They'll not get fascinated only by the actors or by the Bollywood stars. They would also get to see whatever is happening in the class, they are relating it to real life scenarios, they are meeting those people. So I think that should also be encouraged in schools, which will be really, really helpful.
In fact, talking along with, the outward bound learning programs, which is about camping out, discovering yourself also, and not just the classrooms. Yesterday there was a lot of conversation on the 4 walls. So I think just adding to what Swati said, if a child is given to experience reality beyond their own, and we are not representing schools that are just schools where they fly in aeroplanes. If we look at schools where children have to walk, and yesterday we awarded so many people who actually swim to school to give breakfast and lunch to children, and there are barely any resources. So I think looking at all that, and we completely level the play field and we say, what is it that helps every child, whether the child is in a more entitled kind of a space or the child is in a space where he's struggling for resources. I think the champion that emerges is when you give an environment, and that's what we would like to stress upon.
Two quick points. One, what Swati said and something that Mahesh mentioned. Swati spoke about this problem of the syllabus and you have to complete it and all. All of us educators, and I'm an outsider, I'm listening to this last few years, everyone tells me student-centric, and the entire ethos seems to be teacher-centric. Who's completing the syllabus? Only the teacher. The student couldn't give a damn. Student wants notes just before the exam. You people are wasting their time. So you're saying student-centric, but you're still teacher-centric. So unless you get out of the system, these things are not going to improve. Please allow the student to take center stage, number one. And the other point that Mahesh was talking about, learning spaces. Please, like in my school, of course we are blessed with a slightly large campus. We run a program called Campus as a Classroom. But this can be done even in a school which has a building and a small courtyard, a building and a small playfield. Please understand, the child's brain suddenly opens up when he walks out of the classroom. And it gets completely shut, especially in senior classes, when you bring them inside. So you can work depending on your circumstances, but campus as a classroom in which you allow the child not to be restricted by the spaces that he operates in, you will see a positive change coming within days, not even months and years.
Thank you, esteemed panelists. Thank you, audience. I will end this by saying, let's continue to encourage the wise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Could I please request Ms. Vanya Bhandari to felicitate our panelists?